Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. And if you're a true General Hospital fan, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get started with today's video. General Hospital, GH, spoilers suggest that Jason Morgan, Steve Burton, will haunt Britt Westbourne, Kelly Thiebaud, when he returns to town. Will this be motivated by hatred about his WSB imprisonment? If Jason had not been on the dock trying to save Britt for the umpteenth time, he might not have been in the wrong place at the wrong moment. Jason certainly does not despise Rocco Falconeri, Finn Carr, nor does he regret taking the blame for the young kid in relation to Ross Cullum's, Andrew Hawks, shooting. Nonetheless, he may despise his current situation and how Britt was involved. Britt's biggest source of disagreement when she first returned to Port Charles was that Jason never prioritized her. She believed that Sonny Corinthos, Maurice Benard, and Carly Spencer, Laura Wright, always came first, to the point that Jason went above and beyond to demonstrate his love for her. He was even willing to leave Danny Morgan, Asher and Tonneson to protect Britt. When Britt and Jason decided to leave town, he assumed it would just be for a few months and that he'd return. Having said that, being carried away by the WSB revealed a frightening reality. Even when Jason plans things to a T, they can always go wrong. Jason may wish to leave a dangerous life behind for good, and he has already said that Danny will be his top and presumably only priority going forward. Jason became too involved in Britt's turmoil, and in his desire to save her, he lost sight of what was most important, his son. Danny has no mother because Sam McCall, Kelly Monaco, has died, leaving Jason as his only living parent. Jason's decision to flee with Britt was exceedingly risky, and his WSB imprisonment may serve as a wake-up call. Jason returned to Port Charles from Jakarta and immediately went to visit Danny. The two promptly departed town for a father-son retreat without Jason informing anybody, except Tracy Quartermaine, Jane Elliott, who happened to be nearby. This was a true reflection of Jason's renewed dedication to Danny. Danny and Jason are scheduled to return for the Friday, July 24th event. General Hospital teasers for the week of July 27th to 31st indicate that Jason will make his rounds in Port Charles and reunite with friends and family. Still, will he ghost Britt in the process? Jason may simply wish to avoid Britt in general, believing that any involvement with her will pull him down when he has to focus on Danny. According to General Hospital spoilers, all arrows lead to the assumption that Jason and Britt will not reunite anytime soon. So while Jason's refusal to have anything to do with her may distress her at first, she, too, may move on after a few weeks. Jason Morgan was a man of few words and unwavering loyalty in Port Charles's mysterious underbelly, where friendships fluctuated like the tides of the bay and secrets were buried deeper than the Cassadine crypts. But after months of captivity at the hands of the WSB, his return to the tiny New York hamlet had a sense of finality that no one, least of all Britt Westbourne, had expected. The once ferocious romance between the stoic enforcer and the brilliant, tormented doctor had burned brightly in times of peril and desperation, only to flicker uncertainly now beneath the weight of Jason's new priorities. Jason's jet landed beneath a gloomy July sky that promised both literal and mental storms. He hadn't informed many people of his presence, only those who needed to know for his son's safety. Danny Morgan, his teenage son who had grown up too quickly during his absence, sat alongside him in the leased SUV, earbuds in, peering out at the familiar streets. Jason had learned a valuable lesson from his father-son holiday. Away from the tumult of Port Charles, he had listened to Danny pour out his heart. The fear of losing his father again, resentment of Jason's life's never-ending cycle of peril, and a simple plea for normalcy. "Why is it always you, Dad?" Danny had said one calm evening by a lake, his voice trembling with adolescent tension. Those words resonated through Jason's mind like a gunshot in the silence. Britt Westbourne, meanwhile, had been navigating her own rough waters. Her return to Port Charles had been marked by cautious optimism. She and Jason had enjoyed emotional moments prior to his arrest, promises murmured in the heat of escape plots, confessions of love that felt genuine in the face of death. Britt's experience with Huntington's disease, her problematic family relationships, and her tendency to push people away had made Jason's devotion feel like a lifeline. But she also recalled the sting of being secondary to Sonny, Carly, and the never-ending mob entanglements that drew him in. When word of Jason's return spread through the hospital and reached common friends, Britt's heart beat with a mix of exhilaration and dread. Will he seek her out? Will they resume where the WSB had so cruelly interrupted? The answer, it appeared, was a chilly silence. Days passed since Jason and Danny returned from their bonding trip. Tracy Quartermaine had glimpsed them momentarily, her acute eyes missing nothing, but Jason did not make a dramatic re-entrance into Port Charles's social scene. He concentrated on reuniting with his kid, ensuring Danny's school preparations were solid, and discreetly examining the panorama of threats that remained after his WSB ordeal. Sonny Corinthos, the godfather figure, sought out, but their interactions were limited and filled with Jason's new boundaries. Carly Spencer saw the difference as well, her intuition honed over years of adoring the same guarded man. What about Britt? The radio is silent. Britt paced the corridors of General Hospital, her white coat providing a barrier against the mental storm raging inside. She threw herself into work, treating patients with the same uncompromising expertise that had defined her profession, but her thoughts were continuously drawn to Jason. Memories flooded her. The way his calloused hands had held her steady during crises, the rare smiles he guarded just for those he genuinely trusted, the night they had planned to flee together, hoping that a few months on the run would suffice before rebuilding. She had confided in him about vulnerabilities she had never discussed with anyone else, such as her anxieties about her genetic fate, regrets about past decisions, and need for stability in the midst of chaos. Now, the man who had risked everything for her appeared to be purposely avoiding her. The primary reason for Jason's ghosting was not personal hatred toward Britt, albeit the circumstances of his confinement played a significant influence. He might not have been in the crosshairs of the WSB if he hadn't been on the pier that fateful night, intervening in yet another Britt-related issue. Rocco Falconeri's actions had escalated into a shooting, and Jason, ever the protector, took the blame to protect a child. Britt had become irrevocably bound to the web of danger. While Jason had no ill will toward Rocco, the larger entanglement gnawed at him. His confinement had been a harsh reflection of the consequences of his decisions, with interrogations, solitude, and perpetual uncertainty. In the dim light of a safe house on the outskirts of town, where Jason had temporarily set up shop to ensure no loose ends followed him home, he sat alone one evening nursing a black coffee. The WSB had freed him under conditions that required him to keep a low profile, but it was personal reckoning that drove him, not external coercion. Danny's comments haunted him. Danny's mother, Sam McCall, had vanished, leaving Jason as the lone anchor in his son's life. The irresponsibility of intending to depart with Britt, putting her safety ahead of his parental responsibilities, now felt like a clear mistake. "I got in too deep," Jason said to himself, recalling the pier episode. Saving Britt had been instinctive, but it had taken him away from what really mattered. He recalled their early reconnection. Britt had confronted him, accusing him of always putting Sonny and Carly first. Jason had tried hard to prove differently, promising to leave town with her. But the WSB involvement transformed that promise into a nightmare. Now free but eternally changed, Jason saw that any contact with Britt risked drawing him, and, by extension, Danny, back into the vortex. Her drama, her health struggles, the enemies that hounded her family line, it was all fuel for the fire he desperately needed to put out. Ghosting her was not cruelty, it was self-preservation in the name of parenting. Britt, ignorant of the extent of his internal transformation, resolved to take matters into her own hands. She arrived at the Quartermaine mansion one afternoon, knowing Jason had ties there through family. Her knock was timid, her normally confident posture marred by fear. Tracy responded, raising an eyebrow. "Dr. Westbourne, to whom do we owe the pleasure?" Britt asked regarding Jason, her voice firm but her eyes betraying desperation. Tracy, never one to mince things, implied that Jason was focusing on priorities and advised her not to push. The avoidance hurt more than Britt expected. She returned to her apartment that night, poured a glass of wine, and scrolling through old texts, vestiges of their brief but intense relationship. Tears welled up as she remembered his pledge, "I'll always come back for you." Had the WSB irreparably damaged him? Or was he the man she'd always known, capable of cool calculation when it came to defense? As the week progressed, Jason made selective rounds. He met with Sunny at the coffee warehouse, and their chat was a mix of loyalty and distance. "Things are different now," Jason stated bluntly. Sunny nodded, knowing the toll of incarceration better than most. He paid Carly a brief visit, telling her that he was fine but insisting on his right to privacy. Danny thrived on the attention, and the father-son bond grew stronger with each shared meal and quiet drive. Jason even contacted Elizabeth Baldwin, another person from his past, for assistance on co-parenting in difficult circumstances. Britt's co-workers observe her distraction. Her mother, Liesl Albrecht, pressed for further information, but Britt deflected. Deep down, she struggled with self-doubt. Had her past, the lies, the manipulations, the health issues, finally driven Jason away for good? She remembered their escape preparations and how he was willing to abandon Danny momentarily. In retrospect, such willingness felt like betrayal. Jason's ghosting was a textbook in avoidance. No big confrontations, no closing conversations, just silence. Texts went unanswered. Others claimed sightings throughout town, but they never crossed her way. The Port Charles gossip mill churned. At Kelly's diner, customers muttered about Jason's reappearance and Britt's obvious sadness. Maxie Jones handed Britt a shoulder, reminding her of her own strength. "You've survived worse," Maxie remarked over coffee. But Britt's heart ached from the unresolved questions. Was it animosity at the imprisonment? A realization that their love was too fraught with danger? Or is it merely the pull of fatherly obligation that outweighs romance? If anyone had heard Jason's internal conversation, they would have learned the horrifying reality. During his WSB agony, he replayed every option. The peer event crystallized it. Protecting Britt had ramifications for his son. Danny's cry, "Why always you?" was more than just a child's frustration. It mirrored Jason's pattern of self-sacrifice, which had left his family exposed. He adored Britt, or at least the bond they had formed during a crisis. But love was insufficient when it threatened the one person he refused to lose again. Prioritizing Danny required establishing a strong line. Ghosting avoided the tangled emotions, the allure of Britt's magnetism, and the unavoidable danger. By midweek, Britt had to face reality. She pushed herself into a complicated surgery, her hands firm despite her anxiety. She gave herself a moment of anguish after surgery, in the privacy of the doctor's lounge. The romance, which had looked inevitable, now appeared to be another casualty of Port Charles's constant drama. Yet, beneath the pain, a glimmer of comprehension appeared. Jason has always been defined by his protective nature. If ghosting her protected his son and his serenity, she might be able to accept it, even if it devastated her. As July 24th arrived and Jason and Danny planned a more public comeback, the town braced for fireworks. Will Britt force a confrontation? Would Jason's resolve crumble beneath the weight of their shared history? For now, the stillness said volumes. Jason Morgan, the guy who confronted mobsters and federal investigators without fear, had chosen the most difficult battle, becoming the father Danny deserved. Britt Westbourne, feisty and independent, would have to forge her own way once more. The days merged into a tapestry of what-if scenarios. Jason spent his mornings at the gym, rebuilding his strength both physically and psychologically. He met with legal contacts to ensure that the WSB deal was legal, removing any potential stumbling blocks for Danny. Evenings were spent with his son, playing video games, talking about school, and engaging in basic, yet innovative activities. Danny sensed a change. "You seem calmer, Dad." Jason tousled his hair, trying to stay that way. Britt, on the other hand, found comfort in her work and tentative friendships. She confided in Nina Reeves about the pain of rejection, finding parallels with her own complex relationships. "Sometimes the hero chooses the mission over the maiden," Nina remarked bitterly. Britt laughed furiously, but the words rang true. She came to see Jason's departure not as a personal failure, but as a symbol of greater changes. Her own health issues loomed, with frequent Huntington's disease checkups serving as a constant reminder of frailty. Perhaps the ghosting was a mercy, rescuing her from another cycle of hope and heartbreak. However, the attraction remained. Late one night, Britt drove past the safe house location and noticed Jason's familiar motorcycle. She lingered nearby, considering her approach. Finally, she drove on. Some spirits were better left alone until the guy decided to put them to rest. Port Charles never slept well, and neither did its citizens. Sonny noticed the stress and counseled Jason over alcohol. Britt's tough, but family is everything. Jason nodded, his decision solidified. His imprisonment had served as a wake-up call. No more risking everyone's life for the sake of his own. The unexpected explanation for ghosting Britt came down to this evolution, a man reconfiguring his loyalties in the face of trauma. As the weekend approached, murmurs became louder. Jason's rounds continued with a nod to Michael Corinthos and a check-in with Spinelli on IT security. Britt prepared for a charity event at the hospital, her smile professional, but her gaze remote. Friends watched, wondering if the spark would rekindle, or if this was the peaceful conclusion to a difficult chapter. In the end, Jason's decision mirrored the essence of who he was: protector, father, survivor. Britt deserved more than half measures, and he couldn't provide any while rebuilding. The ghosting was painful, but in the warped logic of soap opera life, it was an act of genuine, if silent love for his son, and, eventually, for the serenity they all desired. Jason and Britt's narrative was far from ended, but for the time being, the quiet hung heavy, hinting at future collisions. In Port Charles, avoidance was seldom lasting. Storms loomed on the horizon, and when they broke, the shocking reasons for each ghosted link would be revealed in dramatic manner, as they usually were. Jason's top focus was Danny, with everything else coming in a distant second. Britt would heal as she always did, her resilience equal to any enforcer's resolve. Jason Morgan's closest friends have learnt over time that he rarely takes rash decisions. Every action he takes is carefully considered, particularly when it comes to defending those he loves about. That's why his unexpected silence toward Britt Westbourne has raised so many suspicions. After months of establishing trust and rediscovering their connection, Britt is confronted with an unexpected reality. Jason has mysteriously left from her life. Britt attempts to persuade herself that there must be a legitimate answer. Jason has always led a risky life, full with enemies, secret tasks, and terrible decisions. She understands his world better than anyone because she once stood by his side throughout some of his toughest times. However, as the days pass and no messages arrive, her concern gradually turns to heartbreak. Britt's friends begin to notice the shift. The confident and independent doctor, who often keeps her feelings buried, becomes distracted and distant. She dives headfirst into work at the hospital, hoping that lengthy shifts and endless obligations will prevent her from worrying about Jason. Unfortunately, every hallway and quiet moment reminds her of the man she thought was finally on his way back to her. Meanwhile, rumors start to spread throughout Port Charles. Some suspect Jason has become involved in another perilous endeavor and is purposefully avoiding Britt to protect him from whatever dangers he faces. Others suspect something far more personal. Could Jason have changed his mind about their future together? Has he determined that a relationship with Britt will just bring him more pain? Carly rapidly becomes one of the only people who realizes something is severely wrong. She knows Jason's tendencies better than anyone else because she has known him for many years. She can't believe he'd just walk away from Britt without explaining anything. Jason may hold secrets, but he has never purposely hurt those he cares about. Carly continues to ask inquiries, and she uncovers small pieces of information that just add to the mystery. Jason has been seen seeing unexpected people and making multiple private phone calls. None of these activities make sense unless he is faced with an incredibly serious situation. Unbeknownst to Britt and everyone else, Jason carries a burden that he feels will destroy the lives of those closest to him. During one of his recent investigations, he uncovered information about an old nemesis, long thought to be out of the picture. This guy has emerged with a terrible agenda and has made it painfully plain that anyone associated with Jason may become a target. For Jason, the decision is obvious. He has spent the most of his life making sacrifices to protect others. If distance from Britt keeps her safe, he is ready to go through the suffering. However, he never thought how much his silence would harm her. In private, Jason is torn about his decision. He frequently finds himself going over old photographs, recalling the time he and Britt were together. Their connection was formed under unusual circumstances, and despite all of the challenges they encountered, their emotions remained genuine. He recalls how Britt challenged him, understood him, and embraced aspects of himself that many people never could. Walking away from her is much more difficult than he anticipated. But every time he considers reaching out, he remembers the dangers that loom over their life. However, Britt refuses to accept the situation silently. The more Jason withdraws, the more determined she is to find out the truth. She knows him too well to think he just lost interest. Something is wrong, and she plans to discover what it is. Her investigation takes her into perilous terrain. She starts asking inquiries that draw attention from people who would rather keep certain truths hidden. Britt soon understands that Jason's departure could be related to something far more serious than relationship problems.